The Secret World is a unique footnote in the MMORPG genre's history. It released during a time in the industry when just about every company tried to make a game that would dethrone the massive king of MMORPGs known as World of Warcraft. During this time in the MMORPG genre, it seemed like every game was a high fantasy world taking place in a setting with dwarves, elves, monsters, and magic. There was definitely a few that tried to break away from the fantasy setting with some success. Games like City of Heroes was definitely a popular game among MMORPG gamers that sort of broke the mold of what MMORPGs could be, setting its world in a more grounded reality, having actual people in cities rather than magical realms. Other MMOs that tried a modern setting seemed to struggle at the time capturing an audience. The Matrix Online tried to set itself apart from the popular World of Warcraft and EverQuest at the time in 2005 upon its initial release, but failed to truly keep players engaged, which ultimately led to its closure in 2009. Other games that arguably aren't even true MMORPGs like Crimecraft and All Points Bulletin also tried to get a piece of the MMO pie during their initial releases, but unfortunately faded into obscurity, much like the Matrix Online, with Crimecraft closing in 2017 and All Points Bulletin being rarely mentioned or advertised in recent years. The Secret World essentially had little competition with its unique modern world setting, especially with its flavor of horror sprinkled in within its lore, taking inspiration from the world of H.P. Lovecraft and creating a truly fantastically noir horror modern MMORPG. The only other MMO that was going to try to take its place in a modern horror themed setting was the sadly cancelled World of Darkness Online that was being created by CCP Games, the same developers behind the popular EVE Online. So with that small history lesson behind us, The Secret World was, as stated, one of the only online role-playing games that had this unique setting.
What were you guys aiming for here?
Primarily, this is an MMO set in a modern-day real world. That's really important. It's the only MMO that takes place in the real world, but it's a world filled with myths and legends and vampires and werewolves and demons and, you know, all kinds of, you know, the kind of pop cultural legendary stuff we've read about, heard about. Everything is true in this world. Every single thing.
With that fact in mind, the game was set to be a massive hit as long as the developers made a competent game, right?
You are dead wrong.
Well, I think you can probably tell by the title of this video, not everything went as planned for this ambitious title, unfortunately. Obviously, while I say there was no competition for the game in terms of modern themes, it of course was going up against the massive juggernaut, World of Warcraft, and other titles within the genre right at the time of its release. Games like Diablo 3, Guild Wars 2, and the Mists of Pandaria expansion all launched within the year of the Secret World's release, which unfortunately meant it was fighting an uphill battle right from the get-go. Other factors like unwanted changes and a relaunch also left the game's population to dwindle, and within the recent years, not many people talk about the Secret World, and if they happen to, it's usually talking about fond memories of the game's initial launch rather than its current re-released form known as the Secret World Legends. What exactly happened here? Why is it that the Secret World couldn't ultimately reach a decent audience of gamers that liked the modern horror theme it was going for? In this video, I want to go over some of the history of the Secret World, share some of my experiences with the game, and ultimately ask you, the viewer, the question: is the Secret World dead or alive?
There is a secret world. Everything is true. Everything.
The Secret World began its initial concepts all the way back in 2002, with the project first bearing a few different names, such as Cabal and The Entire World Online, before the name The Secret World was finalized. However, the idea and conceptual design would stay undeveloped for years when in 2003, the team working on The Secret World's concepts was moved to develop the game Dreamfall: The Longest Journey, which was a sequel to a successful point-and-click adventure game with a similar name called The Longest Journey. Dreamfall Dreamfall was ironically first considered to be developed as an MMO, but ultimately released as an adventure game with mild success. Obviously, this could have been due to some of the team originally working on the concepts of the Secret World also working on Dreamfall, one of those game designers being a man named Ragnar Tørnquist. Ragnar at the time was known for refreshing the adventure genre and coining the term modern adventure, popularizing the once dead genre with his successful Longest Journey franchise. Now think about this. In the late 2000s, people were already looking for the next big hit to replace World of Warcraft. Funcom was building traction on a project with a lead designer of adventure and puzzle games, bringing his experience into leading development on a massively multiplayer online role-playing game with a world inspired by the horrors of H.P. Lovecraft. Gamers were excited for something this radically different, but did it pay off? Unfortunately, initial development once Dreamfall was completed was rocky at best, since development for the Secret World continued after that game was fully completed, starting in 2006. The first red flag occurred before the game even shipped, which was when Funcom announced in 2009 a 20% staff layoff within the company due to poor profits, with the company financial reports in the previous year reporting significant losses. Obviously, the major blow here was the delay of the Secret World, which initially started to show teaser trailers around this time, with the first major trailer being shown at GDC 2009. Unfortunately, after this initial teaser trailer, Funcom would spend the next 3 years hyping up the game as much as possible, missing the initial window of opportunity the Secret World could have had it been released in a more juvenile industry in the years previous. Every year after 2009, developer interviews piled up as big major outlets covered the game pretty heavily, attempting to build player excitement, and finally on July 3rd, 2012, after being delayed several times, missing initial release dates such as April 2012, the game released to a resounding thud, only selling 200,000 copies, which was reported by Funcom in the following month of August after launch. The game had a pretty lukewarm reception, with players giving criticisms to the game's combat and lack of content, but the game did have some merits to it. Players expressed a great love for the game's story and quest system. The quest system being one of the best an MMORPG has to offer, even to this day, since it has elements of things like augmented reality and largely brain-teasing puzzles. It also didn't help that the game released with a firm belief in the subscription model, as well as an upfront cost of buying the game. Remember how I mentioned that it was bad that the game was delayed so long and possibly missed a window of opportunity? Well, in 2012, MMORPGs that had a subscription model that were not already established games like RuneScape or World of Warcraft were largely free to play with a cash shop or option to pay for subscription. The Secret World had no significant IP brand recognition to really carry its name, besides Ragnar Tørnquist's involvement in the project, and even then, unless you were a big fan of the Long Journey franchise, the Secret World would still fall off most people's radar. If the game had released in 2009 to 2010, sales most likely would have been much stronger. Unfortunately, due to low sales of the game, the Secret World had to quickly shift its business model to a buy-to-play title in December 2012, dropping the pay-to-play model. This switch did initially bring a large player base to the game, as Funcom would announce a 400% increase in player population. Unfortunately, Ragnar Tørnquist would leave the project he so eloquently crafted, being the main designer of the game's world. While to an extent this was not necessarily a bad thing, since he was more majorly known for crafting the story and lore of the game, it still wasn't something that would build confidence, as it's never good news when a lead developer leaves the game. Content for the Secret World seemed promising, with updates coming monthly. Typically, the updates, called issues, would provide small additions, things like a hard mode for a current dungeon, or maybe a new auxiliary weapon to equip like the rocket launcher. Issue 4 was the first major update to the Secret World, which launched the game's first major raid, introduced the Albion Theater, which is a social activity, as well as the chainsaw and PvP balances. However, monthly content stopped when the game shifted to buy-to-play. Content updates would instead come every now and then with a sporadic schedule, but content was coming. Each new issue brought something new to the game. There was raids, events, activities, PvP, PvE, quality of life updates, etc. The game was slowly but surely building a decent amount of content to experience. experience, even if it was largely debated that PvP was broken and unbalanced. Another reason people left the game, but I digress. Issues continued all the way up to issue 15. Then something major happened. 2017 marked a downturn for the Secret World. On July 31st, 2017, the Secret World relaunched with a new name, the Secret World Legends, and this time it was free to play. Most would think this is a good thing, right? Well...
No, man. No, man. I believe you get your ass kicked saying something like that, man.
The Secret World Legends seemed like a major slap in the face for veterans of the Secret World. With a relaunch of the game, they were told that everything they had purchased was essentially null and void moving forward, and that they would have to start over. They could continue to keep playing the current old version of Secret World, but that version would no longer be updated. Another completely baffling decision made was that specific content that was in the original Secret World is strangely just missing from the Secret World Legends. Some of it was due to story changes or content restructuring, but major gameplay elements are just gone, even major pieces of content, promised by the development team to later be re-implemented at some point, but hey, at least the combat got overhauled.
Right.
The Secret World Legends alienated a somewhat small but dedicated fan base in an effort to try and grab a whole new slew of players, with it being free to play. Unfortunately, with the free to play shift came other major MMO sins like a cash shop, restrictive free to play elements, and loot boxes. If you ask most veteran players, they will typically tell you that Legends feels like a massive step down compared to the promise that the original Secret World had. All of this leads up to where the game is today. Currently, the game no longer calls the updates issues, but rather just updates. Legends has had some major updates, with some new content available, but it's nothing like what it used to be. Unfortunately, the failure of Secret World is pretty clear. First, it had an uphill battle with the game's theme. While it definitely had a unique setting going for it, taking place in the modern day, it's clear, especially with the genre's track record, that MMORPGs that tend to break the mold of fantasy typically don't do too well, unfortunately. Other issues held it back, like the constant imbalance in PvP, low initial content at launch, and then finally an incredibly botched relaunch within Legends. My experience with the Secret World is slim, but I did play both the original Secret World and Secret World Legends. The first time I ever saw the game was when a pretty popular YouTuber named the MMOGRINDER did his review of it. His initial video of the game back in 2012 made me want to play the game, so I did, and after about a month, I fell off like I normally did back then, since I was playing my main game at the time, DCUO. Check out his video if you want a more time-stamped review of the game. It's a great video. From what I remember, the original game had much more customization options and character progression choices than Legends does, but I can't necessarily knock Legends either, as more recently I gave Legends a shot. The groundwork is still there for a great MMORPG. The story, the lore, dungeons, fun mechanics, and even to a small extent, some of the customization, just not nearly as much as there was. A common misconception is that the classes you choose are what you play, but most people don't realize is that the choice you make in a class when you create a new character doesn't really matter, since every weapon type can still be unlocked no matter what class you are. You just have to unlock them now, as Funcom changed the system to try and monetize it. The game is still fun to play, and currently at the time of making this video, I even subscribed to the game and bought some cosmetics since I was enjoying my time with it. I think the game to an extent did get dismissed by the mass simply for its look in the modern times. There are very few RPGs that take place in a modern setting that do well, coupled with the fact that the game released in 2012 with lots of competition in the MMORPG market. Even its uniqueness couldn't save it. I do ultimately think that the game should be tried by those who initially dismissed it based on its look, because there is a deep, enjoyable game here. I fear that a deep side effect of this game's failure also means that major game companies will most likely stay away from this type of setting as well, due to so many games trying a modern day grounded theme and just not doing well. Hopefully this game can maybe one day bounce back and finally get that audience it deserves, because with so much quality behind the game, it's a damn shame it's in this current state. I think the team should go back into potentially porting the game over to consoles now that MMORPGs are more commonplace on those platforms, especially since the original Secret World was planned to release on the Xbox 360, but was ultimately cancelled.
It's we announced the game for PC and Xbox 360. We don't have a release date quite yet. We are playing the game. We're having fun playing the game, so, you know, it's not gonna be forever, but there's no set release date quite yet.
If they could release Legends on consoles like PS4 and Xbox One and make it cross-play, the game could potentially have a major resurgence, but like the real world, only time will tell. So everyone, this is the part of the video where I ask you, the viewer, do you think Secret World is dead? If you've played the game in the past or are currently playing the game, tell me about your experiences with the Secret World. Tell me if you ever plan to try out this game, but never took the leap into giving it a proper try. I read and respond to every comment, so let's start a discussion. I want to thank everyone for watching this video. I guess you could say this is my pseudo Halloween special episode, but hey, you know, not really. Anyways, if you like this video, consider giving the video a like to help with the YouTube algorithm, as well as subscribing to the channel if you have not already done so. Also, follow me on my social media channels like Twitch, Twitter, and Discord. Those links are down below in the description. Anyways, that is all for this video, and I will see you next time.